Hello, everyone. I'm Eric from Etiquette, back for another Sunday night live stream. If you're new here, put your name and where you're from in the comments. This is a live stream for teachers where we talk about teaching, especially teaching English as a second language. But anyone's welcome. So if you want to chat about something, you can put it in the comments. But today we have a very special episode because we will have a teacher with us. His name's Brian Tolentino. He's also a YouTuber, and he has some great ideas and we're going to talk about teaching. I'm just going to give a couple of minutes to wait for everyone to join, and then we'll start, and I'll bring Brian on. And as always, BM, you're here. You said, "Hi, Eric. Are you okay? Can you comment on the death of Queen Elizabeth? How do you feel?" Well, actually, I commented here and I said, "Hi, BM. I'm not sad, but she's had a long life. She has done a lot. She's lived through so much. But with all death is sad, but it also helps us think about how we want to how we want to live our lives, and how we want to lead our lives. So, it's a reflective time too. By the way, I have failed. I have failed. As soon as I got the news on Thursday, I had some work I had to do Friday. I want to make a video on activities to celebrate the life of the Queen, and I quickly wrote a script, but I had so much other work to do that I finished on Friday, and then yesterday and today I did nothing. I was supposed to shoot it and edit it. I didn't do anything, so I'm a failure. But it's okay. I'll try and do it tomorrow. It will be a bit later, but I hope it's got some fun ideas that you can use in class. Bonnie Esther, morning from Massachusetts. Welcome, fellow educators from the world. Hi, Bonnie Esther. Good to see you. A model of servanthood. Yeah, I think one of the quotes I like when she became queen, she was actually in South Africa. And one of the things she actually said, what she said at the end, she said, where is it? Oh, this is the wrong one. I wrote it somewhere. Okay, wait, I found it. She said, I was busy with this. She said, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." And I thought that was, living in service is such a good trait, such a good quality. Okay, let's quickly go through. I'll introduce Brian in a second. I'm just quickly going through. We've got Martin here. I'm fine, thank you. See him. Hi, Jason from the Philippines. Today you are so happy. No. BM, not very happy today. I just very lazy today. How about you? How are you, BM? Duan, good evening. By the way, guys, if you've got any questions that you want to ask, I'll bring Brian on. Remember to save the difficult questions for him, not to me. Gamers from Siberia, interesting. Okay, James, lovely to have you. How have you been? Are you happy? So right now in Korea, it's Chuseok, so we've got tomorrow off. How are you spending your Chuseok, James? Martin, when I heard the news of I was upset and shed a tear. I was fortunate to have met. Wow, very interesting. I think wait, Martin, did I see a photo of you posting it? I don't remember that well, but yeah, no, it's definitely big news. And the now or what's happening now for the next I think it's for the next week or two. There's a lot of interesting things happening with that. Inkar, hi. Okay. Oh, we've got different opinions here. Okay, very interesting. Carmen, hi. Okay, guys, I'm just going to give it one more minute and then I'm going to introduce our guest for today. So, our guest is someone that I've wanted to have on for a long time. He also has a YouTube channel. I put it in the description below. Tolentino teaching, and he shares some great ideas and activities, especially for writing. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to mention it. And without further ado, Brian, hi.
Hi, good morning from Los Angeles. How you doing?
How are you? What's the time there now?
It is just after 6, so bright and
Okay.
early. The sun's not out yet. Not out yet. So
You usually wake up this early?
I do because I have 2 kids under 2. So not willingly, they wake me up. So.
I like that, not willingly. Okay, well, Brian, to everyone out there, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm an English teacher in Los Angeles. I teach English language learners and English language arts. However, I taught. Welcome, hello. I taught in South Korea, and I also taught in the country of Georgia. I taught English in both places. If there's any Georgians here, I think I forget my Georgian at this time, but I was fairly conversational. So if there's any Georgians here, hello or Kamajibat. um,
Can
yeah,
you say something in Georgian? Something nice?
Kartuli Dama, Kartuli Damavitska Dama.
Oh,
I
what does
forgot.
that mean?
I said I forgot. I forgot. Uh,
Okay.
but I mean, so I did, yeah. So I lived in Georgia, South Korea. In Georgia, I worked for a organization called the Peace Corps, and in South Korea, I taught here for 2 years in Chungcheongnam-do or Sosan. Loved it, and now I'm in Los Angeles teaching. Love it. I have in my classes, it's about 30 to 40% are foreign born.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of English language learners is a terminology we use here. So it's very interesting. It's an awesome challenge to have. I gotta teach English language arts and English, and there's also English language learners in there. So it's a cool blend of students I get to teach.
I think it's much different from what most of us do, or for myself. I came to Korea and I'm teaching here, where you're teaching English as a second language, whereas with you, you live in the States, so you've got students that actually move to America, and you've got to prepare them for life in to be successful at life and to be able to communicate, and also for the future. If they perhaps want to get a job, or if they want to be a professional, or for college. Is there a slight difference in, because you've taught in Korea too? Is there a
Yeah.
difference between teaching ESL and EFL?
Yeah. So the students I get, they tend to have their. I mean, there's a lot of the community, a lot of Spanish speaking communities here, but there's English all around. So most of my students come with basic English. Now they're conversational. So what we work on here is we work a lot on their writing, because a lot of my students have trouble with the writing portions of what's called the LPAC exam here for the ELLs. So they struggle with the writing. So we focus a lot on writing and academic language. So improving their vocabularies, building their confidence as writers, so that when they need to write an email to their boss, or they need to represent themselves on paper, they can sound professional. They can have confidence in their writing. So we focus a lot on that. That's what I focus a lot on now. Um, for example, in Korea or Georgia, we were just trying to get students to talk and experiment
Yeah.
with the language. Don't like you have to make a lot of mistakes to learn a language. So you're just encouraging them students to. I'm trying to discourage my students to talk now. They talk.
Yeah.
I'm like, stop talking. We
Yeah.
need to write. It's
Yeah.
the opposite where I taught in Georgia and South Korea. You're trying to get students to play activities, to use that language and context and all that.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's the we're here to get them to communicate more and to become comfortable using the language. But now you've got students that are conversational, but they need to learn these other skills. And I think that's an advanced skill that you have to teach. And I don't have a lot of experience doing that, so that's why it's so great having you on. We've already got a few comments here. We've got Julia. A quick question by Kev the Rev. He says, Brian, can you wait, this is the other way around.
You ever
Do you
watched
know
Autumn? I ask you, have you ever watched Autumn in My Heart?
No. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
Okay. Well, okay. We've got a Kev, I have no idea, but I'm going to look it up later. Hizia says, hi, do you know the different stages of writing? Do you know anything about the stages of
What are the
writing?
different stages of writing? I mean, I follow certain stages. I don't know if you have a certain thing that you follow. For me, the first thing I'm trying to get down for my students is conventions. So what that is proper punctuation, spelling, and capitalization. And for students to have a certain kind of clarity, because we can't write essays, we can't really do formal writing if we don't have these basics down. So that's the first stage. Get down conventions. Um, I got like hundreds of writing prompts we use for this. I actually use a lot of creative writing prompts and a lot of writing prompts about students and their lives. I try to get students writing about things that interest them or about themselves, especially if they're reluctant to write. So the first stage is conventions. After that, I try to expand their writing. Okay, I'm trying to get them to use phrasal verbs, idioms, as much language as they can, and then I condense it later on. Once it becomes more advanced, you're trying to be particular with your language later on, and you actually want to eliminate phrasal verbs from your writing later on, and those idioms. You don't want those in your writing later on.
Right.
Active verbs. So it's my students are kind of like, man, you tricked us. Because you're trying to get them to write as much, and then like once they get those skills down, it's like now we gotta really hone in on the precision of your language. So
wow, yeah, I think it's a totally different skill. It's really, yeah, getting them to focus and it's very specific, and it's a different skill to learn to teach than just okay, well, write a letter. Now the writing process, what I can see is so you get pre-writing where you decide what to write about, then you research, so you write down some ideas, you draft, you write the first letter, you revise, and then editing. So those are the 5 steps. I had to look that up too, I forgot about it.
Okay, yeah, for me, the whole writing process, when you're talking about editing and pre-writing and all that, I think there's general steps, but it depends on your students. It depends how they're reacting to content. Like it's hard for students to write on stuff they don't have background knowledge on. So if they don't have a lot of background knowledge on the topic, then you're going to want to do more pre-reading and pre-writing activities. It just depends.
Exactly. It's so important to know your students and understand what they need, because your students are going to be different. Like you said, perhaps they don't know something very well, so now they're going to have to research more, or you want to practice some other functions, which is really interesting. We've got Bonnie Esther. Bonnie Esther, I missed your previous one. Let me quickly try and find that again. Hi, Brian. I'm a specialist in teaching educators of ELS. I'm always referring folks to CAEL standards. Okay, so the standards for California. Great resource for any teacher of. Okay, so yeah, you must be. Yeah, you must know the standards really well by now.
I'm a specialist in teaching.
And then she's okay. So do you work with any genre-based instructions, systemic functional linguistics in your ELA classes? That's on new things.
I do not, but I want to look that up.
Definitely.
That's very interesting. So I'll look that up, and we do not use that. But yeah,
it's always it must be so different living in different places in the States, but you can learn so much from each other. But I've got a bit of a different question before we get back to the writing. Because obviously I've met a lot of teachers, especially American teachers and Canadian teachers here in South Korea, and many of them are interested in moving back home and teaching there. Was it difficult to go from Georgia and South Korea to going home and settling back in, or was it difficult to get teaching qualifications?
Yeah, so I had to go back to school. I went and got my master's. So I got my master's in teaching credential, because it's just everything's different here. But it wasn't for me. It wasn't. I was actually kind of ready to come to the U.S. again, and I was excited about. I teach in an area. Most of my students are Latino, and I love being in diverse contexts. I love that about living overseas and really working with people from all over the world. So the great thing about the US is we're so diverse here, or depending where you are, but especially California, we're so diverse that you get to work with people from all over the world. Like a lot of my students are from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico. So we had one from Ukraine recently. So it's cool.
Very interesting. Yeah, and they all get along as a kind of like a melting pot, or or what kind of environments do the students enjoy it? Getting to know all these different, or do they kind of stay in their own groups?
It depends. It depends on the context. So at my school, it's mainly Latino, so they kind of they kind of segregate in their own ways. Like the students who are born here tend to stick to their friends, and the people who immigrate. But it's for the most part, it's pretty good. The differences are in sports.
Oh yeah,
So
tell me
yeah,
about
so
that.
like the students from Mexico, Guatemala, they're super into
Football.
they're super into soccer.
Mm.
So we're always talking about soccer with them, and then with the students who are kind of born in LA, they tend to be more into like the NFL or the NBA. So
Mm.
it
Very
makes you
interesting.
feel
Yeah,
right.
I can see that happening. Well,
Yeah.
we've got a great question from Steve here. He says, okay, so you answered where your students are from, but
Yeah.
what is your typical class structure like? So how do you run your classes? By the way, yeah, your classes have started back up.
Yeah.
It's all going well.
Yep. Classes have started. Things are going great. I mean, I love it. I'm very lucky to have a job I love. So,
Nice. And
class structure. Yeah. Class structure. I often start class with a writing prompt. So we're really trying to get our students to write more. So when they come in, I have hundreds of writing prompts that I use. I have videos. I'll share them here. I have a assortment of videos free. I'll share with everyone here exactly the same videos that I use. And what I do is some days I'll give students a choice on what they write about. We have there'll be like 5 different writing prompts, and one will be why is K-pop so popular? Because K-pop is like really popular here now. So one will be like why is K-pop so popular? One will be on anime. One could be on video games. One could be on write about yourself. And then I give students the choice. So they come in, they have a writing prompt. They don't always have the choice, but sometimes I give them the choice. They can choose. And what I'm trying to do is kind of personalize writing for the students, because when they write about things that they like or they know or they have interest in, I see the writing really, really just shine. So they come in, they have a writing prompt. I give them quick feedback. I have to see it. I have to see it before I have to see what everyone wrote, and I give quick feedback. So that's really important. It's really hard for me to grade all my student writing. So I try to give quick feedback on the spot. So I'm like, oh, here, oh, I see you. You didn't use periods and have this
Yeah.
this paragraph. Look at every complete thought. Oh, look at here. What would you put a period here? Yeah, okay. And then every student has their own things that they're working on, and I try to give as much positive feedback as corrective.
I think
So
you must have gotten so good at, just scanning and looking for errors, or not
yeah,
for errors, but for ways to improve their writing. And that was actually my next question.
yeah,
Is the one thing I remember when I was teaching in South Africa is I had these piles of essays that I had to grade, and and to give corrections and to give feedback. But if you've got a couple hundred students, that's really tough. So I'm curious, and we've got another question here from Kev. It says, yes or no is a good way to learn writing is to edit fellow classmates' writing. So
that's a great
what
question.
what tips would you give for? Let's talk a bit about corrections and feedback. How would you go about it? What tips can you give teachers out there?
It depends on the kind of writing. So I
Mm,
try to give for just kind of informal writing, like writing prompts and stuff like that. I try to give very quick feedback, and that's that. Now essay writing's a little more difficult. And essay writing, I can't. My feedback is not as timely, and I don't think there's any hack or
mm,
way to really. It's if you're you can look for general trends in the writing. Um,
mm,
but you're going to spend a certain amount of time. What I try to do is if I look at the essays and I see common errors being made, what I'll do is the next morning I will I'll put up examples of the errors on the board and say, hey, and I won't put a name. I don't put anyone on the
mm,
spot. I say, hey, this is something I'm seeing in your writing. Um, you are, I don't know, you're not doing this, or students are, their thesis statement isn't very specific. I've seen that in like half the class. Let's go over thesis statements. So I'm very spontaneous, and then maybe the next day we'll spend the whole day on thesis statements. So
yeah, I think that's really really good for, because with speaking, writing, the good thing about writing is you take the papers home and then you've got evidence of what mistakes they're making. Especially if you find the same common mistakes, then you can go back and say, okay, well, listen, well, I guess we're going to have to work on this a bit more. But there is no other way to check the students' work except to check the students' work. That's the only thing you can do. And by the way, guys, I just posted. Actually, Brian, I just posted it before you sent it.
I was gonna.
So check out this document. It's a Google Doc, right? That Brian has. He's collected all these ideas. He's put it into videos, and so if you need a quick or what is it, a prompt, a writing prompt, or some ideas.
These are all video lessons I use with my students. Exactly what I use. You can use them totally free. You can make your own copy of the doc. You can use the stuff you want to use, not use, but these are what I use. So I have editing tasks. What I do is when students come in the room, if we're not doing the writing prompt that day, we'll do an editing task where they'll have to correct sentences. I'll project the video on the board. They write it down. So editing exercises, I have vocabulary exercises, and I have writing prompts. A lot of writing prompts that I use. So it's exactly what I use.
I was curious. I'll get back to Kev's other question now, but yeah, I'm curious with the writing prompts. Why do you think it's so necessary, and why do you enjoy using them in class? I think there must be multiple reasons, not just for them to practice, but also to get into the habit of writing.
To get in the habit of writing, and also I try to personalize the experience. So students, when you have a diverse set of writing prompts, you can really find prompts that match each student. I'll give you an example. There are certain students that don't respond to prompts very well. And then what I noticed is if I have some, for example, a group of boys that don't like writing. And then all of a sudden I have design your own car, or what is the you debate, what is the greatest video game ever? And then their ideas flourish. And when they're writing on something, and then I have something to give them feedback on, because a lot of my students are reluctant writers. Especially the boys, that's just what I run into. They're not into writing. They don't try as hard as they need to. There's a lot of errors in their writing, so I need them to write on stuff. So the writing prompts are great for personalizing the content. And then in my rubrics I give them, I want them to experiment with language. So if students are using words incorrectly, that's actually a good thing for me. I give them credit for that, as long as they don't do it intentionally. Then it gives me the chance to give them feedback. Like, oh, actually, I would not have used expedite in that way, but I love how you used expedite. I love how you, for the writing prompts are supposed to be a time of experimentation. If you get too much in the test taking culture, students don't have the freedom to develop their ideas and develop their
creativity.
Their words.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is difficult with writing too, is because you've got all these different skills in writing too. Like, for example, you should be able to write a list, or you should be able, for me, I think descriptive writing was something that I struggled with. There are actually all these different skills within writing that you have to learn. So there's so much to go over. So Kev, the other thing I was thinking about is, so for students to edit writing, their classmates' writing, I think that can actually help the students and the teacher to, perhaps not for every single assignment, but perhaps some things that you want them to check if it's not formal might be a good idea.
I think it depends on the class. I've had it, Kev. I've had it where students provide great feedback to each other, but for the most part, in my experience, it has not worked well.
Mm.
It's kind of like I don't know. The feedback students gave each other was limited, and
Mm.
so in my classes, it's just for my classes I give the main edits. If the
Mm.
students are a little more advanced, or you can group them. If you have one student who's a more advanced writer, you can group them with
Yeah.
other writers who are not as advanced. But for
I
the
can
most
see that. I think perhaps with grammar and spelling errors, maybe some basic errors they can pick up. But I mean, that's why they need a teacher. It's not like you can have someone. You have the students teach each other speaking. You know, you're going to need some more advanced students that can perhaps give some ideas and share ideas. But I think that only works until a certain level. We've got another question here. It says, "What is the aim of scanning and skimming in reading?" Any answers on that one?
Oh, you don't have enough. If you read everything, you wouldn't have enough time. Um, yeah, it depends on what you're reading and the purpose of reading it. If you have a great book or you have something that you really love, then you don't want to scan and skim. But we have tests. We have like it's called the AP Language and Composition exam. You have to write 3 essays in 2 hours and 15 minutes. So you have to scan and skim the prompts. So it just depends on the context, I think.
Mm. I like when my kids use their courageous English. It really informs our next instructional move. You sound like a pro. Bonnie Esther, what kind words, and I agree.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Your mix of feedback methodology is laudable. I love it.
I like
Excellent.
laudable. That's a great. See, if that was my yeah, laudable is a great word choice.
Yeah. Okay, this Steve, fantastic questions. Thank you so much. And here's here. We'll get to yours now, but this is a great question, and this is something that I always like to ask is so. What are the main roadblocks in your students' timely development? So what problems do you run into when teaching? Steve, so well put. Thank you.
For me, I think it's just I deal with a lot of lack of motivation in a lot of my students. So that's the number one thing I deal with. I have students come back to me when they're in college and say, "Man, I wish I would have paid attention more. I wish I would have tried harder." So I think students kind of get in their own way. Other roadblocks in students' development could be talking about LA. It could be living conditions.
Mhm.
Uh, Maybe they don't have a good living we run into that issue as well.
Mm.
Also, the biggest thing to be a better writer, we can use all these strategies in the world, right? But you have to read.
Mm.
Overall that's the best way to develop writing. You could have all the writing prompts, you could have all the
Mm.
uh, I use writing prompts to build momentum, to build students confidence, to but you have to read. Reading
Yeah.
really teaches you the rhythm of the language. Every language is different. The way every
Mm.
language where they put periods, whether everything is different, and it's a system. And in English, you have to learn the way the system works, and the best way to do that is to read professional writers.
Very true. I mean, that's how you improve, and that that's going to go into your writing. I read some. I don't remember the exact statistics, but they said that in the world right now, they don't have a problem with students getting accepted into university or college. They've got a major problem with the dropout rate. So you can have X number of students going in, but if 60% of them drop out, it means that they've wasted their time, they've wasted a lot of money, and that's a big problem. And I think that comes down to getting used to writing and building that writing skill. You know, when you go to university, it's non-stop essay writing. So I was very fortunate when I went to university. I wasn't perhaps the best student, but I enjoyed writing, and I would sit down and write these assignments out. And I think a lot of so many people dropped out because they just didn't want to put in the work, or maybe they don't have the skills. Because it's one thing is having the writing skill, but you've also, I think, sitting down and working through something, writing it down, that's that not persistence, but trying to get through it. That's another thing you also have to learn, and it's
I would,
it's,
I
it's
would,
not something you can just have.
I would definitely say persistence, because
Mm.
become a great writer, you have to edit a lot. You have to be really particular about your words. You have to scan over it. That's one thing we really try to teach, because writing is hard. Even the best writers, they'll share what they do. Their first draft is terrible, and they show all the edits they make. So like editing is it's grueling. It's grueling, and it's hard, and you have to learn. There's an endurance to it for sure.
We had another question here. I just want to quickly look it up. Oh, here we go. VJ, what a great question. Hello, Eric and Brian. It's great to see you both. I would like to ask one thing. What do you think about English literary events? Could give some suggestions for making competition for students. How about that? Have you used competitions or some events to inspire your students or to motivate them or to?
Yeah, it's funny you ask, because in every class I have a writing contest, or whatever they write is like I try to turn a lot of things into contests, but they're contests. You get to write your name on the board if you're the contest winner, and I'll do this for the writing prompts. I like doing that. It encourages my students, but I don't. If I see a student who's made a lot of progress but maybe didn't turn in the best, whatever, I will make them the writing contest winner for that day in my class. So I try to give and I give candy. A lot of people don't like the idea of giving candy. They say that's not intrinsic motivation. Hey, I give candy, and even my high schoolers, they love it. They love it. They win, they get a piece of candy. That's what I use. But yeah.
My dad says here, readers become writers. Very true. As kids, we did not have TV and essay. We read 6 storybooks per week during vacation. I even read encyclopedias.
Just turn on the subtitles.
Very true. But I haven't been reading as much as I should have either. But yeah, it's probably because of social media and also everything being around.
Yeah, and most TV, I believe, I don't know exactly. Most TV is at like a 7th or 8th grade reading level. It might be lower. I can't remember, but
yeah,
TV tends to not have the language that books do. Books have more complex language. They use more academic words.
It's the same in websites too, where I think, they advise to write at like a 5th grade level so that more people can understand it. So it does feel like, that the language is being watered down. So it's up to us to try and get our students to use better language to, I don't know, I've got to use better language. So there was another good question here that I wanted to bring in. Hizia said, my students, this is a question I have. And I just brought up websites. I know that I was talking to some teachers here in Korea during the pandemic where they did writing, and they did it, they had to do it online. So I was wondering, is there like some of the writing, is there some way that you can think of getting the students to practice writing for perhaps creating blogs, or getting them to write articles, or using social media somehow? Is there some way to actually integrate technology into writing?
I think that's a great way of doing it. I haven't done that as much as I should. We have we had students create like little blogs, and then they could add whatever they wrote to the blog. It worked well. However, it took a lot of work on my part to try to manage the blogs, make sure they didn't write anything inappropriate on the blog. So it's probably just me not giving as much attention towards it. I think that's a great way. Podcasting. I think these are all great tools that I want to use more in the future, because the fact is content creation is booming. In the United States, the #1 small business was content creator. It's growing small business. So whether you work for a company in the future or whatever, there's going to be social media. Someone has to run that. We represent so you can just take a video on your phone and create. It's an important skill to have, to be able to use social media and all these other outlets that we're going to have in the future.
Yeah, it's important, and being able to write for it, it's so important. I've been watching some of I've been watching television recently, and then you watch these shows and then you think, Wow. I wish they had better script writers. What happened to good script writers out there? So it feels also with movies. You don't get these great written movies anymore. So I don't know if it's because of the generation or because we're losing a lot of talent. I'm not sure, but it's just something. Jackie, hi Jackie. She says the writing process can come from the brain to stimulate at an early age from parents. So we've spoken about the students learning. Do you talk to the parents, or do you give suggestions to the parents to help the students? I think it's a bit different with older students, because the parents aren't that involved anymore.
Yeah.
But how do you think for elementary school teachers, how they can perhaps get the parents on board to help with?
I think
with
the best
yeah.
thing you can do, and I'm not an expert on this. We covered a little bit of this in my master's program. Is reading to your kids is so essential. In fact, there was students who had books read to them, opposed to who didn't. Had their vocabularies were much lower at the age of 2. At the age of 2. And you tend to see this in more high income, low income. You see differences in that. So reading, once again, not my expertise, just something we covered a little bit in grad school. But I think reading is very important. Reading to your child.
Yeah. Have you started reading to your kids? By the way, how old are your kids?
I have 2 kids under 2. One's going to be 2 in November. The other one's 6 months. It's a lot of work. I don't read to them as much as I should, but luckily my mother-in-law reads to them a lot. I read to them a little bit, but I read to them and then I turn on Coco Melon. I'm not gonna lie. We have this
put on that Coco Melon, yeah. Being a very new father, do you think it's impacted your life at school or your teaching?
Oh yeah.
Apart from being tired all the time,
No, not really. I mean, I have less time, but it's I think having children is kind of invigorating, and there is an inspiration aspect to it. You want to be kind of like better. You want to be a good role model. So I don't think my children are old enough in the sense that it's really impacted me too much on my teaching and how I see my students. But yeah, it's been a blessing.
That's an honest reflection. Well, Steve, being the best question asked today, actually, this is something I've been thinking about. So, with students using electronic devices to input text, do you think that autocomplete and autocorrect features are they beneficial or detrimental to learning writing?
I don't know. I think they're detrimental in the sense when you have to write on paper, you don't have that technology or that tool to help you, and you kind of rely on it. I think it can help students to figure out what their issues are. The problem we're having now is AI. There's actually AI programs where I'm just on this. I just trying to figure out. I had students who their writing was it lacked clarity, and now this year I'm like, wow, what we're doing is really working. And then the student showed me a program he used to
the AI writer.
Yeah, the sentence was the syntax was a little off, and then it was brilliantly written. So I don't know if any of you have dealt with that. That is interesting with AI and writing. That I don't know where we're going with that, but I just last week discovered this.
I think it's just I've actually used some of the AI writing to see if I can write some scripts and generate some ideas, because it does find some good things to use, but it's still not nearly good enough to be a writer.
It doesn't tie in the ideas well. So per sentence it works.
Yeah,
but like a great writer is going to be able to tie in the ideas logically and really.
I think plagiarism and cheating has been around since people were around. We've found ways to cheat, and it's just become easier with technology. But we should teach our students that it's not going to pay off in the long run.
I
These
agree.
skills that they are acquiring will be with them for the rest of their lives, and it's also going to impact them in many different ways. So, in the past, you would take things off Wikipedia and mix up scramble the words and cheat that way. And now they're just going to use more AI writers, and you can even hire copywriters. So yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then developing your language skills is really, really important as well, because it's really interesting. I read this thing where like, unfortunately, our brains deteriorate in certain ways at a young age, or we're not as logical or whatever, but your vocabulary skills do not reach their peak till like 70. So your mind is
Wow.
designed to really, really acquire language for a long time. So if you can build that habit early on and just keep doing it,
I
you
think I
can
hit my peak at 30 and it's just been downhill since then. I don't know about the 70 thing. Okay. Yeah. James also just asked about Grammarly. Yeah. I think, a little bit of assistance could actually help the students where they see, okay, well, but I think that's more the reading part of it. And then Steve says, thank you. It's been very interesting. Just struggling to clarify this with my level preparing for them. Okay. Have you ever dealt with it? Okay. Well, this is a different question. I don't think I've ever had this question. Have you ever
trying to
dealt with
sabotage the language. I've had that plenty of times. I've had that plenty of times.
Yeah.
Students trying to sabotage the lesson.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were nationalistic or anything.
But they were trying something.
Oh yeah, students all the time try to sabotage the lesson.
Yeah. So classroom management, how does that go for you?
It's very important where I'm at. So it's a big chunk of the job. Um, so if you don't have classroom management, then you're not able to teach these skills at all. So for me, when I first started teaching where I'm at, because I really struggled. I had students go on the roof while I was teaching. Yeah. That's to explain. Yeah, so it was tough. So what I did is I have videos on this as well. What really helped me is I developed my disposition more. So I really focused on being a warm demander. So a warm demander, if you're warm, you build relationships with students, you take interest in what they like. You really, really, really focus on that, but you have to be demanding at the same time. If you're too
Yeah.
soft, if you're too nice, then they're not going to respect you. So you got to find that balance. And for me, it took years. It
Yeah.
took years. And I've gotten a lot better. It's still tough, but for me, that mindset of being a warm demander, I'm coming in energetic about the lesson and the job and the students, and I take
Yeah.
interest in them and what
Got
they
a
like.
purpose.
But then also, you got to be demanding. You have to, like, hey, I'm holding you accountable. We're gonna call home. Like, you have to do this.
Yeah. Being accountable. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I read this book on classroom management, and basically the author studied teachers for 20 years, and he's the way he describes this is the only way he describes it is it's someone who means business. So I
Yeah,
was like, I understand what it means, but we need to find a way to put that into words, and
it's
help teachers to do that.
it's palpable. You can feel it. I've observed classrooms with uh women female teachers who are like short, right?
Mm,
Unbelievable presence in the classroom. The
mm,
students, they wouldn't
yeah.
there's a sense of good fear. And I've seen
Ah,
classrooms where there's giant dudes and they have
mm,
no ability to the students don't respect them, or
yeah. Well, it,
it's
it definitely takes experience, but I think there are skills that we can learn, like everything, that we can learn at an earlier age. And that's why I'm going to try and find them and share them. Gabriella has a question here. She asks, how to make an effective feedback. Okay, how to give effective
yeah.
feedback.
The best feedback for me is personal. So hopefully over time you've read enough of your student writing that you can see their writing on paper, and if they forget their name, you're like, I know who that is. So over time, you know what each student tends to do well and what they don't do as well. So I think the best feedback is personalized. Now that's difficult when you have a lot of students. I
Mm,
get it. But I think feedback that is, yeah, if you try to do that the best you can, That is the best.
I was just thinking about it too. It's also the way that you give feedback. Like you said, it's going to be difficult to reach every single student and to give them feedback. But when you do give feedback, you do it in a way that builds the student up, and also it shows the other students that it's okay to make mistakes, and it and they can also see what kind of errors they make, and it helps them be a bit more reflective too. So it's important to do it in a kind way.
I try to celebrate mistakes. I'll tell them, hey, I love how you were trying to do this. I love how you try to use a dash there. That's how you get better. I love how I try to celebrate that. And my feedback, I try to keep the feedback as positive. I want to be a combination of positive and corrective.
Definitely. I see everybody enjoyed your example of being a warm demander.
I have a video. I have videos on this, so
Yeah,
I created videos on this because I struggled so much.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I struggled. So I have videos on it. I can upload. I can.
Do you have the link? You can just copy the link and then throw it
Yeah,
into the comments, and we can
find it
check it
right
out.
now.
Because we actually, Psych Ed Nurse asked, "What is your favorite video?" And we'll let Brian share that shortly. Well, it's actually, we've got 15 minutes left. It's already been 45 minutes. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, here I'll get the link. Sorry.
Yeah. So, by the way, guys, while we'll wait for Brian to do that, yeah. So tomorrow I'll I'll shoot and I'll upload the video on activities on to celebrate the life of the Queen. Oh, I can see it's in private chat. I'll share that now. So this is I'm going to watch this afterwards too. Yeah. So, what are you busy with now? Before the end of the year, are there things that you would like to achieve, things that you would like to work on? You've got some projects in mind, or just teaching?
For me, my whole life is teaching right now, teaching and the kids. So I have no life. No, I teach a lot. And then I work on YouTube gives me it's a creative outlet for me. And it lets me, it makes my teaching really fun because I just create resources. I have like 600 videos, and my teaching is experimenting. And when something works, I create a quick video, and so I do that a lot, and I spend a lot of time with my kids. No big projects. My goal, like as a teacher, obviously there's so many things I can improve upon. I try to do like one thing at a time. We were talking about feedback. Once again, I'm trying to get better with feedback, especially on essays.
That's a question actually we have from James. James, thank you for the amazing questions. How much allowance do you give for a writer's individual style? Some of the best writers use, punctuation marks and things in different ways. And I guess one time, I'm going to tell a quick story. So I enjoyed writing essays, and I remember it was one semester, our English teacher, she was just giving us so much work. We had to write stories, and I started out writing a story. And my friend, who also enjoyed writing, we basically wrote two stories set in the same universe, or in the same setting. It was so interesting because we read each other's, and we wrote it. And then I had another friend who paid me to write his story, and I said, so I wrote his story too. And then and it was just so much fun. But the teacher immediately saw my style of writing, and she's like, "Eric, you wrote this." I'm like, "Maybe." You'll never get it out of me alive.
That's a good
I know.
teacher. That's a great teacher if you're able to figure that out.
Yeah.
But for individual writing style, that is actually, in my opinion, that is the goal. When all these rules, when it comes to writing, they're important, right? But if you read Hemingway, if you read the greatest writers in the English language, they break the rules. Now they're allowed to because they have the basics down. Most of my students do not have the basics down. It's like in baseball. In baseball here, when a little kid hits, they keep their elbow up, right? To stay on top of the ball. Okay. But the pros, a lot of them have their elbow down because they've developed the skill of staying on top of the ball.
They've mastered it.
It's the same kind of thing with writing.
I
So
was thinking the exact same thing. It's with like with art, Picasso. They were masters at it before they started finding their own style. And you can put in your own things, but first and also
it,
with cooking. Sometimes you've got these chefs have to go. The greatest chefs, they go and they train in a certain style. They don't just cook their own way. They master their craft first.
it can't be too artistic though.
Yeah,
You're not Hemingway.
yeah.
But individual style. And also it depends on the purpose of the writing. If you're writing a formal essay, then you don't you don't need to be as descriptive. You don't need to be doing a creative writing prompt in the middle. It depends on the purpose of what you're writing for,
Mhm.
right?
Very true. Well, Bonnie S is here. I like the term conventional standard written English approaches and writing conventions, but nice to validate their style. Good comment, Brian. And she says we can use jazz of English after we learn basic chords. Interesting. James says great answers. And then Bonnie, Esther, and Steve are having a discussion. BM, what? So do you exercise? You're a bit busy now. Well, do you do any activities apart
Oh
from
yeah,
teaching? And
I had a dream of building a man cave before the
uh,
kids. It'll come to fruition eventually. But we
eventually.
started a little gym in the garage. LA, we
Excellent.
have good weather, so you can have like a gym in the garage. I used to be
Mm.
a personal trainer.
What?
Yeah, I used to do personal training. I did it on the side until the pandemic. So it's something I would like to get into again. I love weightlifting or what I would consider healthy bodybuilding. If you could,
Mm.
it's I not enough time to explain it right now, but yeah, I like lifting weights and I love watching football. It's not playing. I'm gonna watch
Uh,
my team today.
the Vikings.
The Vi-
They're playing. Well, good luck to the Vikings. I hope they beat the Packers. But that's very interesting. I had no idea that you were into fitness. I enjoy going to the gym, but I use like light dumbbells and I stretch, and I should get into heavier weights at some point. As soon as my finger heals. Okay. Please suggest to me where you. Okay, this is a bit different. You're right. Oh, you guys are still talking. Okay. TEFL course, I don't think I can give one. Yeah, so what are you going to work on this week with your students? Anything interesting that you're going to try and do with them this week?
this week, let's see, what do we have planned? Um, we are we're going to analyze a speech by a famous baseball player called Lou Gehrig, and
Yeah.
he gave
The
an
Lou
amazing.
Gehrig disease,
Yeah,
named
Lou
after
Gehrig.
him.
Yeah, he got his disease. He was one of the greatest baseball players, and he was known as the Iron Horse because he never missed a game. And then he started feeling weak. His production went down, and then he found out he had a few years to live. And he was very shy when it came to speaking. And the whole Yankee Stadium wanted to hear him speak before he he retired, before he was going to die, and he gave this amazing, just genuine little speech. So we're going to look at it, analyze it. Maybe I'll have students. I like having students imitate the tone of writers, so kind of like imitate the way they write it.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds really interesting. I haven't heard his speech before. I'm going to
I
look it
got a
up
video
after.
on it, and I have a rhetorical analysis on it. It's an excellent speech. It's just the guy's just so genuine, and he's about to die. He's going
Hmm.
to die in a few years, and he just talks about how blessed he is, and
Wow.
it's very powerful.
Reminds me of the last lecture by Randy Pausch. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's
No.
very. It's
Oh yes,
basically
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes. I've heard of this.
yeah.
Yeah,
A very interesting way. He got diagnosed with cancer, so he wanted to make he
yeah.
was really big into animation. He was one of the forerunners, a professor teaching about digital animation, and he worked on things like Toy Story. I think he worked on things like Toy Story and things like that, where they used 3D animation. But so he created this last lecture where he talks about his life and also, some of the lessons he's learned. And I think it's such a, for someone who knows that they're about to pass away, sharing that with the world.
Yeah.
Uh, Brian, Eric, speaking of writers, well, Steve, you know what? If I wrote down questions before this, I couldn't come up with all these questions. Okay, so he says, speaking of writers, who are your favorite ones and why and since when?
Uh, growing up, I really liked Bill Bryson. I like it when a writer is funny and witty and makes you laugh. Uh, he writes a book about traveling on the Appalachian Trail, and he's just like, what some of the phrases he has is, so he said he lived a life of waddlesome sloth. I remember certain phrases, and he's hilarious. And
Mhm.
he just, the way he's able to capture his story traveling. So I love Bill Bryson. I used to read travel writing so much. I love David Sedaris. Anyone who makes, I like laughing. I think when a writer can make me laugh, that I love that. So David Sedaris, travel writers. There was a writer, Jan Morris. Jan Morris wrote some, like, she could go into a city and just capture it in a way that you can't even. It's just, I'm like, how do you have so much knowledge about a place like this and explain it in such a way, like, why can't I be that smart? So I like writers that kind of wow me in that sense or make me laugh.
Mm. Well, for myself, I'm a bit different. I've always, since I was young, I would just read classic writers. Like, I think the very first book I read that my dad had it was Charles Dickens. It wasn't The Tale of Two. It was Great Expectations, and then I read that. And I think I was 10 or 11. I was 11 or 12 at the time. A really tough book, you know. It's
Oh.
using Old English, and it was tough, and I had to read it with a dictionary next to me to look up the words. And then after that, I just felt, okay, well, let's read more classics. And then if I heard about a classic, I'd try and read it and find out. But more recently, I haven't been reading a lot. I mostly listen to audiobooks, and it's usually about self-help type of books. One guy I really enjoy is his name's Stephen Pressfield, and he wrote a book, the War of Art, and it's just basically how to be productive and things like that. So I kind of enjoyed that. And let's see why. And then James says the best writer I've read is Walt Kelly. Wow,
Oh,
James, I'll definitely look into it. Walt
I
Kelly.
will
I'll look
too.
that up a little bit later. Um, okay, well, we've got 2 minutes left. We can see everybody coming in here. Steve says, thank you so much. Bonnie Esther says, such a rich conversation today. Nice to hear from a young dad. Thanks for the resources and blessings. Yeah, guys, please go and support Brian. I put his channel is in the description, and also we pasted the link to all his resources. Copy it, use that link. I think it's got so much to share.
Yeah.
Brian, I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I'm so happy I had you on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm very impressed with what you've done. I think you're a great interviewer. I think your channel really helps a lot of people and your success shows. So I'm really impressed with what you've done.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and before you go, any last words, things you want to talk about or you want to share for anyone out there?
I have hundreds of resources. I can't stop.
Mm,
I'm gonna create them. It's my and so I'm my goal is to have hundreds of SAT level words up. So I have word of the days, writing
mm,
prompts. If you, I give instruction on how I give feedback on the writing
mm,
prompts on my YouTube channel. I'm trying to just create a wealth of resources
mm,
that teachers can tap into, and because everyone's teaching situation is different, the
mm.
resources don't work for everyone. But I think the goal is to have resources that are a little different and that create the video format works really well for me. So I want to share that with others. So there's hundreds of resources. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. They're coming. So
Mm. Well, yeah, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to watch that about Lou Gehrig from your channel, and yeah, thank you for making all those resources. Like you said, it might not work for everyone, but you're making so many. There,
Yeah.
there's bound to be a few for every teacher out there. Brian, thank you so much. You don't have to switch off, but we can say goodbye to everyone. Everyone, have a great week.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.